Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer, and this is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the dumb stuff I did to get put in prison, and I've also got a lot of stories about the crazy stuff that happened when I was actually in prison. And God forbid you end up in prison. You want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So, I got some stories, because I did all kinds of hood rat stuff with my friends. I got in all kinds of stuff, like trying to make my life a movie or something. Like, that was what I always said. If my life was a movie, would I watch it? So I was always going at trying to do crazy stuff. This guy got me top by 10. Okay. Right now where I'm having this little insomnia issue, I'm going to wait till after I get, which is starting to pass now. It hits me every once in a while. But Pinto, I need to call the dude. He's my best friend in prison. I don't know why I ain't called him yet. Just live this little secluded thing. I need to call him. He's my best friend in there, man. And his stories, oh man, this story, ritual slaughtered a blessed drug shipment. What? I mean, we were bouncing stories off each other, trying to, one up some of these crazy stories. After he told this one, I was just like, shoot, you win. That's some gnarly, wild stuff, and I'll get to that in a minute. But before I do, let me put some context behind Santeria. I didn't know nothing about Santeria. All I knew was I listened to that Sublime song aplenty. I don't practice Santeria. I ain't got no crystal ball, so I didn't know what it was. I figured it's some hoodoo voodoo stuff since it's talking about a crystal ball. Well, then I get to prison, I see most of the Spanish people attend the Santeria services. Regardless, Mexican, Puerto Ricans, everybody attends it. At the medium security, Marcelo Armando, who's like number 2 for the Paisas, he was the head of the Santeria services. So they give him a catalog of stuff, give him a budget he could order. And a lot of people go to services for a lot of different reasons in prison. I mean, you got a bunch of white people that do this Odinist thing. They don't think, Odin and Thor and all that. I don't think they think that when they die they're going to do it. It's more like a heritage thing. But Native Americans and the people who go to Santeria, they get to smoke tobacco. Tobacco isn't allowed in prison, but they allowed it at the services. So Armando get a cigar, and he'd break the cigar up, give people some tobacco. They'd roll a little pin joint. They just give each person enough for a tiny little bit. Cut a piece off of it. He'd make $100 probably over a week selling that little bit off. But anyway, he had this altar in his locker. So there's like 3 sections in the locker. There's the one section just goes all the way up and down, nothing in it, no shelves. The other has 3 sections. His top left section had this picture. I guess it's Santa Muerte. So it's like a skeleton woman that looks like crazy, freaky, like scary. And he's got like this little bundle of twigs that are tied up and some other stuff. And it's an altar. A lot of the Santeria people did it, but since he's the head of the Santeria services and he had stuff, he had an altar. And there was an issue where a lieutenant was kind of a prick to him, and he kind of retorted in an unkind and in a smart alecky way, and he got put in the hole for a couple days. Now there's the CO working at this time, Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown is a middle-aged black woman, and when you get put in solitary, the CO comes in the cell, packs all your stuff, they take it to the hole. Since the person's in the hole, they don't know what's going to happen. So I'm in there, she's figuring out what's mine, what's his, and she opens that locker, and I wish I could do this more justice, but when she opens that locker to pack his stuff out, she sees that top left-hand corner, and she goes, nope, I'm like, what's wrong, Miss Brown? Nope, I ain't doing that. I ain't doing what? She said, I'm packing them out, but that right there, no. And she wasn't doing it. She wasn't going to mess with that Santeria altar. She packed them out. She left that as it was. She didn't touch a thing in there. A lot of COs were scared to touch that, and a lot of people had altars. It was so funny, her reactions. She kept packing them up, packing his stuff up, but she couldn't quit doing that. Like, it wasn't like to make me amused. She wasn't that type of person. It's because she freaked the F out. She's like, nah, I don't even want to be packing his stuff up with that thing looking at me. Like, it was like that altar was looking at her. But it cracked me up every step of the way because, I mean, she was dead serious. And I'm sitting there and I can't help it. I laugh. I'd laugh at a funeral if somebody does something funny. I can't help it. Like, if something like that happens, I'm going to bust out laughing. I laugh at the most inappropriate times if something hilarious happens and it's like not politically correct to laugh or whatever. I can't help it. You know, when something's funny and like my mind processes stuff in a weird way, so I see it in a funnier way. And if you heard me explain how I see something, you'd laugh too because my mind works in weird sorts of ways. It's odd. But it was like the funniest thing that I wish I could do more justice in explaining it to you. But she just kept doing that, and it was anyway. Yeah, he got out of the hole. He came back and he's like, "Hey, Pero, check this out." And Pero's dog, you know, you hear a lot of Spanish people say it, and you know, yeah, it's kind of funny, you know, the "what's up, dog" thing translates in other languages. They're saying that in other languages, but hey, Pero, you know, and que on the way, what's up, fool? You know, wave means fool or whatever. Learn a little bit. I don't know enough. I know enough when somebody's talking about me in Spanish, you know, living with him for that amount of time. But he lifted up that Santa Muerte picture. He got some tobacco and like a razor under there. He said, "See, they don't mess with the altar." And I'm like, "Shoot, you got it figured out, don't you?" And yeah, they didn't mess the altar, so they didn't find this stuff he had hidden under there, razor and his little bit of tobacco he had. So that's one instance of it. Okay, people being, you know, thinking about this. But another one, and I'm going to get to Pinto here in a minute, but when I first got out of prison in the federal halfway house, and I've been in prison for majority of my 20s, been around no girls, so of course this is something bad that happens to a lot of people get out of prison. They end up going out with the first pretty girl they see. I did. Mexican girl who got caught with like 8 bricks of crystal, took police on a high-speed chase. She loved to argue. I don't do that. Only time I'll do that is if I had insomnia. You know, you've seen me on here a couple times, past couple, but that's not typical of me. When I've rested and everything, you know, I don't do that. It's just something I just don't like to do. And it was like she'd want to fight about anything and just go ghetto on somebody. But she kept talking about how her grandma told her, how mom told her, and how she believes that all of her bad luck she's having is because her ex, who was pretty high up in, you know, dealing and all that stuff, and I guess probably cartel related. I know it was her sister's boyfriend. He escaped back to Mexico. They didn't catch him. Her and her sister got put in prison, but her sister's boyfriend didn't. He made it back to Mexico, and he's like a big cartel guy. Wild stories I heard about that. But anyway, all her bad luck was because she thought her ex-boyfriend was lighting this black candle. I guess they got this black candle in Santeria. You take somebody's hair, toenail clippings or something, and you cast a spell on him. And she thought, you know, he's casting this magic on her, and, you know, had this look. And I'm like, you know, that's not why bad stuff's happening, right? And she's like, not hearing it, acting like I just don't understand. And I'm like, you're having bad luck because you're making bad choices. You keep doing impulsive, dumb stuff. And it drove me crazy because, I mean, I'm a more careful person, and she do stuff like that. Okay, you get drug tested once a week in the halfway house. As soon as you get drug tested, it's usually a week before the next one, unless somebody tells something. As soon as you get tested, she goes smoke a joint. It clear out of her system in a week. If you do it every day, it builds up in your system. But one-time use. But what if they test you before then? What if they test you an extra day? Going back to prison, you ain't even been out a couple months. It's stupid. So choices like that were being made, but she thought all the bad luck was because of this voodoo candle that had been lit for her. So did her grandma, so did everybody else. Couldn't tell her nothing about none of that. That's just how it was. So people really put stock in this stuff. So my buddy Pinto was 23 years old, got caught with $1.2 million in cash. He had like 3 houses, a restaurant, and $700,000 in a bank account laundered by a crooked banker who turned out to be a DEA agent who was undercover. Sounds like he saved that DEA agent's life. People were going to get him, and he warned them about it. And he, like, I guess the undercover, sometimes they really become, he's got some stories, man. He had 4 cops he was paying off, politicians, judges, and everything. He got a few years for the drug charges, but it was more for corruption. First time ever being in trouble at 23, he gets a 15-year sentence. The police he was paying off got probation. The police were grown men, 40-year-olds he was paying off. He had them robbing other dealers and stuff, and they got probation. They're robbing dealers for him. And by paying them off, number one, they did not patrol his couple blocks. They left them alone. Number two, they'd hit people, even hit one of his dealers. I mean, it's all been published and everything. They hit one of his dealers. Even one time after he picked up something, he had them fake arrest him and take him around the corner, let him go, so it looked like something got hijacked and he wouldn't be able to cover it. Some wild stuff. I mean, this is some like movie type stuff he was involved in. So he's my best friend, man. I love Pinto. That was my buddy. I love him, but I hate him. We get to fighting all the time. He'd make me fight him. Now he got down to 240, but he got 300 at certain points. He got heavy at certain points, and I'd be sitting there reading a book. I like to read a lot of books. After I spent the time in Santeria, I really got into reading. And I'd be sitting there reading, minding my own business. This is a low security, it's a cubicle setting. And he'd come up, he'd smack me in the arm, and he'd say, "Oh, you think you're tough, huh?" I said, "Pinto, man, leave me alone. Leave me alone, man." He'd come up, and he'd say, "Hey, you think you're tough? Come on, tough guy." And then he'd smack my book out of my hand, and then it was on, we'd be fighting. I mean, it was all in good fun. I'd try to get double underhooks. I'd get my shoulders underneath his armpits and lock my hands in the bunk and use my head to dig under his head and pop his head up, so then he couldn't get, so then he's stuck like this, and then I start popping him up with some knees or something like that. There's a number of times, man, he'd come up and he'd start saying, "Hey, think you're tough, dude? Show me you're tough." And then at the end, all right, and it was funny, but that's my buddy. The ring that his wife wears today, he got married in the visiting room of the prison. His wife, wears a ring that came from my mom's store. So that's pretty cool. I need to call. I don't know why I hadn't. I just been closed off from everybody, everything. But anyway, we're bouncing crazy stories off of each other as stuff we did. Like, the wild stuff we did. He tells me one is crazy. I tell him one is crazier. He tells me one is crazier. And then we keep going back and forth until he tells me this one, and I'm like, shoot, man, I can't top that. You got me beat. I mean, I've had some wild stuff doing hood rat stuff with my friends, but, man, he had some crazy stuff that it topped me 10 times over. Stuff that he got into, man. He'd be telling stories, and I might try to get him to do it. I am going to try to get him to do it. He could easily be doing this, telling stories about this stuff. Incredible. And but anyway, so what the story was he worked his way up. Like I say, he's a kingpin. He owned 2 blocks. He owned the blocks. Like, he didn't even stand on. He just, he owned them. He had people patrolling. He had the whole system, everything else. So he said when he got up so high in in the network or whatever, that everybody in this network believes in that Santeria, and that he didn't have a choice with the connection, him, and even some of his lieutenants or whatever had to be a part of this. And if he didn't do it, nobody was going to do it. He was basically forced by his supplier to do this thing. So they'd pay a Santeria priest to do this ritual to bless a shipment that was coming in, and they slaughter I think it was a goat, and take the blood and do a cross or something on their heads and all kinds of stuff. If you listen to Joey Diaz, you'll hear about it. After he did some ritual where some crazy stuff, he had to wear white for an entire year after the ritual. That's part of it. But anyway, so he had to do this ritual and go along with it. And he's telling me about how he had to go along with this ritual every time there was a big shipment. And I'm like, man, you went through. He said, I have a choice, man. He said, you get so high up and you're a part of these people, you got to do what they say. So I'm standing in here and they're doing all this. I'm like, the Santeria priest did that? He said, yeah, you got to hit him off with $1,000 to do that. And I'm thinking, priest can be bought. The priest can be bought. That ain't good. But I'll probably get him, before I end up going on mess something up on this, I'll get him to tell this story. one day. But yeah, sounds like that's some wild stuff he had to be a part of in order to do it, and it was not an option. He didn't have a choice. It was, you know, you're a part of our network. This is what we do. This is to make sure it gets there okay. This is how we do this. You are a part of this. Everybody has to be a part of this that's involved, and that's how we protect ourselves. Like, they really believed it was a protection spell. It was a protection spell. It's going to protect everything, and paid a priest $1,000 to do this crazy thing. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that because I don't want to mess anything up about what I'm saying about this, because he'd probably tell it way better than I can. But some wild stuff. I mean, you're talking about, think about you got like a goat and stuff. I don't even know where you get a goat in Philadelphia. I mean, I don't know where that's at. I mean, some wild stuff. I mean, what do you look like? Walking a goat into a place, a priest walking a goat into somewhere with a bunch of people who are hustling. Be a wild scene, I can imagine. But anyway, if you like the video, press the like button. If not, it's 16 minutes and 5 seconds of your life, which you'll never get back. I need to call my buddy Pinto. Soon to get over this insomnia thing. Call him. I miss my buddy. I had somebody check, make sure he's okay. That was the biggest thing I needed to know. I had to avoid talking to people on probation. There was an issue with that, like trying to get me tripped up or something. So that's the reason. But I am newly off of probation, so I need to get on that. Doing a little bit better at the insomnia stuff. Still getting to me a little bit. It passes. It passes. Be back to my normal self. You can see I'm functioning better today than I have been the last few days. It's just part of it. That's just part of what I deal with. Part of what I got to go through. I wake up 4 to 10 times a night, and that's with medication. Without medication, I just don't sleep. It feels like you're sleepwalking when you're going through it, and it's hard to explain because it's not like, oh, I'm just tired during the day. No, it completely warps like your emotions, depression, everything else, puts you in some weird places. Get you thinking about all kinds of different stuff. But it passes, and it's kind of like a storm you got to weather, This is something that it's going to be okay. It's going to pass, and it's passed just like it always does. But sorry I haven't been in the comments. I will be much better about that. I'll usually try to answer every single one. I really do my best to do that. Sorry I haven't on the last few. I'm gonna be. Even now I'm still a little bit tired, but I'm going to be back on that. Something to take pride in, and I try to give real responses to anything that people talk about on there. I don't try to just do little one-off. I don't copy paste job. So yeah, I'll shut up. See, where I'm still a little bit tired, I'm rambling now, so I've wasted even more of your time. I hope you liked the video.